Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for another book review. My name is Adam, and in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at Stephen King's 1922 standalone book that is actually a part of a collection of stories written in 2010 called Full Dark, No Stars. It is the first story in a collection of four that got republished as the Ultimate Storyteller as a standalone, and this is the version I've read. Now I gotta say, I enjoy watching like Yellowstone and 1883, and so the date 1922 was really appealing to me, and that's what kind of urged me to go and get the standalone, even though I already had the collection, which I didn't actually know was in that book when I bought this one. But yeah. The story is basically in kind of the fashion of either a written letter or a diary. And it starts in 1930, April the 11th, in a hotel where somebody has written out some documentation concerning their life for the past 7 years. Now, the whole story itself, or the majority of the story itself, does take place in 1922, and then at the end of the book it kind of then goes to over skipping several years to 1930, where the book finally finishes. And obviously this was written by Stephen King, which I forgot to mention. I gotta say, I really enjoyed this book. I just come off reading Cycle of the Werewolf, which I think is a genius piece of work, but this one is just as good when you think about it after reading it a little bit. Like, on the surface, the story, which I'm not going to spoil, but the story is basically a one man's confession for killing his wife. And that's not a spoiler, because in the very first sentence of the book, it says, "To whom this may concern, my name is Wilfred Leland James, and this is my confession. In June of 1922, I murdered my wife." Okay, first two sentences. So it's not a spoiler. But the genius of this work is not in the events of how he killed his wife, or, you know, the events that kind of went after that. But it really, in the last like 5 pages, is where, like a film, it just all comes together. And it really adds another layer of depth to this book, which is what I want to talk about. So obviously him killing his wife happens early on in the book. It's 1922. He's a farmer. He has a farm. He has a wife and he has a son. And obviously there are neighboring farms. And set in the time of 1922 is really, I would say, kind of a good move, because you haven't got all of the distractions of like the internet or modern technology that really kind of give it an isolation feel. The fact that it's set in 1922 with the technology they had back then and the way life was back then, it is written so like how I would feel, true to the time. All the characters, of course, like every Stephen King book, are well written and behave just, I imagine, like a farmer would back in 1922. Of course, it has got, you know, him murdering his wife, which is written very, you know, graphically, you know, and I mean, even her character, you know, Stephen King really kind of makes you not want to like her, you know, with what she says and what she comes out with, and almost like a justification for Wilfred murdering his wife. But then the events that take place after that, and how that event has affected not only him, but his son, his community, is initially just kind of like an alright story. You know, you think, yeah, it's like a thriller. And that's the first layer. If you read the book fully, that is the initial layer. But where the genius comes into it is the secondary layer, where by the end, and again I won't spoil, you realize, has it played out the story correctly, or is it him just going mad? because of how it ends, I really do think it adds kind of a psychological layer to this book, you know, where he believes in a state of mind against the reality of what he actually is in. It is really well, and obviously it is a short story. It kind of feels like it could have been one character's arc from a larger book, you know? In a collection of 4 stories, this is perfectly placed as a nice start story for, you know, Full Dark No Stars. But if it was like a fully fledged book where it would have been, say, this thick, you kind of feel that this is just one character out of many in the story where you're tracking his journey. And if, you know, other characters, you tracked their journey, then it could have been a fuller standalone book. Whereas Stephen King decided just to focus on Wilfred and give a slimmed down version. Now, 1922 has also been made into a feature film, which I haven't yet seen. I meant to see it before doing this review, but I just simply ran out of time. I have got it, and I will do a review on that in a separate video. But I really enjoyed this book, you know. It's not that long, so if you're kind of intimidated by some of the books from Stephen King where they're like that thick, this is a perfect intro where it's very short, you know. It'll take you about a week to read it if you spend like 2 or 3 hours reading a night, maybe even like 3 days. It took me a few months because I don't spend hours upon hours reading. I have to be kind of in the mood for it, and it does suck you into a mood about almost halfway after he murders his wife. You then are intrigued by what the events that happen afterwards. Like, it's so hard to talk about this book without spoiling it because I don't want to take away anything for you, the reader, if you haven't read it yet, that you will come across when reading it. And if I just tell you certain things, you're not exploring that for yourself. So kind of hard to talk about it, you know. But it is a deeper leveled book, I feel, than initially on the surface. Like, and on the surface, it's a thriller, you know, about a guy murdering his wife and what happens, but there is other layers, I feel. If that is true for what Stephen King intended or not, I don't know, but it's what I've read into it, and that is the whole purpose of these book reviews, is here is my thoughts on the book. I really enjoyed it. Would I read it again? Probably, because it is so short, but knowing what happens, maybe not, I don't know. I probably will read it when I get around to reading this book in full, just to say I've read that story in that book, but I already have, so no point. But anyway, if you haven't already got it in your collection, you can get it as a standalone in the Storyteller edition, or you can go out and get the full, you know, book, Full Dark No Stars. I highly recommend it. I really loved it. But let me know your thoughts. Have you read it? What did you think? Put it down in the comments below. And if you have a suggestion for the next Stephen King book that you'd like me to read, put that also down in the comments, and I will, you know, go get it. I've pretty much got them all, you know. There's about 5 or 6 I haven't got, but pretty much got quite a few. And I'm probably going to do another short story next because I'm kind of warming up to the thicker ones. My attention span, you know, isn't that great for. I have to train myself up for Stephen King, basically. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this book review, and join me in the next one where I review the next book I'm reading at the moment, which is Silence of the Lambs. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.